10 years had passed since that night we saw Daniel for the last time. Life had changed in quiet, beautiful ways. Emma and I had grown older, calmer, and more grateful. The wounds that once tore us apart had turned into faint scars, reminders of how far we'd come. Our home in Austin had become a place of peace. The garden, which once symbolized pain, now bloomed brighter than ever. Emma had planted sunflowers, the same ones she used to love in our early days together. She said they reminded her that even after facing darkness, one can always turn toward the light. I often watched her paint in the backyard, her brush moving softly across the canvas as sunlight danced on her hair. Sometimes I'd bring her coffee and just sit beside her, saying nothing. We didn't need words anymore. Silence between us had become the most comforting sound. One morning, while reading the newspaper, I came across an article about an art award being given to local teachers who inspired change through their work. To my surprise, Emma's name was on the list. She didn't even know she had been nominated. That evening, when she came home from class, I handed her the paper. "Look at this," I said with a smile. She gasped when she saw her name. "Michael, I don't believe it. You earned it," I said proudly. "You turned your pain into something beautiful." The award ceremony was held a week later. Emma stood on stage, her eyes shimmering under the lights. When she received her award, she gave a short, heartfelt speech. "There was a time," she said, her voice trembling, "when I thought my life was over because of mistakes I made. But someone believed in me again. That belief changed everything. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it rebuilds the future." The audience clapped, and I could barely hold back my tears. I realized that forgiveness wasn't just something I gave her, it was something she helped me give myself too. After the ceremony, we walked outside into the cool night air. The city lights shimmered around us, and Emma looked up at the stars. "We made it, didn't we?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yes, we did." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for a long moment, we stood in silence. The pain, the doubt, the sleepless nights, all of it felt like a distant memory now. What remained was love, quiet, mature, and real. Years went by, and we grew old together. We traveled, laughed, and celebrated every little moment life gave us. Even in old age, Emma continued to paint, and I often helped her set up her canvases in the garden. One afternoon, she handed me a finished painting, a simple one of two hands holding each other against a sunset. "This is us," she said softly. Even when everything broke, we still held on. I framed that painting and hung it in our living room, where it stayed for the rest of our lives. Time eventually did what time always does, it carried us forward gently. Emma passed away peacefully one spring morning, surrounded by her art and the flowers she loved. I held her hand until the very last moment, whispering the same words she once told me: "Healing isn't forgetting, it's remembering without the pain." After she was gone, I continued to visit the garden every evening, sitting on the bench we used to share. The sunsets still painted the sky in gold and orange, and every time the wind rustled through the sunflowers, I felt her presence beside me. Our love story wasn't perfect, but it was real. It had cracks, storms, and shadows, but it also had sunlight, laughter, and endless forgiveness. And that's what made it last. In the end, I learned that love doesn't have to be flawless to be forever, it just has to be true. Even after everything, I still smiled every time I thought of her, knowing that the woman who once broke my heart was also the one who taught me what real love meant. "Some love stories don't end," I whispered one evening to the fading light, "they simply continue, in memories, in art, and in the hearts they leave behind." "Because I knew you'd react like this," she said, her eyes glistening. "I didn't want you to think something was going on. Then why meet him secretly at a coffee shop?" "It wasn't secret, Michael. We were just discussing plans for the exhibition." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the same doubt that once tore us apart began to grow inside me again. I told her I needed space and spent the night at Ryan's place. The next day, I called the art center and asked about Ethan. The receptionist confirmed that he was indeed one of the volunteers helping organize an art event with Emma. I felt both relieved and foolish. Maybe I was the one who hadn't healed completely. Maybe I was the one still trapped in the shadow of her past mistake. I returned home that evening and apologized to her. She didn't get angry. She just hugged me tightly and whispered, "I understand. I broke your trust once. It'll take time for you to believe in me again." Her words hit deep. I realized she was right. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. From that day, I decided to truly let the past go. We began spending more time together again, cooking dinners, watching old movies, and taking long drives. Slowly, laughter returned to our home. The exhibition turned out to be a huge success. I attended it proudly, watching Emma shine as people admired her art. Ethan was there too, but this time, when he spoke to her, I felt no jealousy, only calmness. That night, as we drove home, Emma held my hand and said, "Thank you for believing in me this time." I smiled and replied, "Thank you for giving me a reason to." Life wasn't perfect, but it was real. We learned that love isn't about never making mistakes, it's about choosing each other even after the mistakes. The road to healing was long, but every day we walked it together, step by step, heart by heart, stronger than before. A year after the art exhibition, our lives had finally settled into a calm rhythm. Emma's art career had grown. She was now teaching full-time and occasionally selling her paintings to galleries. I had received another promotion at work, and together we were slowly building the future we had once dreamed of. Our marriage wasn't flawless, but it was steady, peaceful, and full of quiet understanding. We had learned from our past, at least that's what we believed. One evening, we were invited to a charity event organized by the art center. Emma was excited because many of her students were displaying their artwork there. I could see the happiness in her eyes as she talked about it all week. The event was held in a large hotel ballroom in downtown Austin. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. Soft music played as people mingled, admiring paintings and sculptures. Emma introduced me to many of her colleagues, including a new face, Ethan's sister, Lily. She was cheerful and friendly, and she told me how much she admired Emma's dedication. For once, I felt proud instead of suspicious. But then something unexpected happened that night. As we were leaving the event, a man approached me in the parking lot. He was wearing a cap and looked vaguely familiar. When he lifted his head, my heart froze. It was Daniel, our old watchman. My past and present collided in a moment that left me speechless. "Michael," he said quietly, his voice calm but tired. "I didn't come to cause trouble. I just needed to say something." I stepped back slightly, instinctively defensive. "What do you want, Daniel?" He sighed. "I know what I did was wrong. I crossed a line I never should have. I left town because I couldn't live with the guilt. But I heard you both moved here, and I wanted to apologize, to you and to Emma." Before I could respond, Emma appeared behind me. Her face turned pale as soon as she saw him. "Daniel," she whispered. He looked down, ashamed. "I'm sorry, Emma. I destroyed something good. I wanted to tell you that I've changed. I'm working as a security supervisor now, trying to fix my life." After almost a year of healing, things between Emma and me seemed better. We had moved past the storm and were learning to laugh again. Life had found its rhythm, or at least that's what I thought. One Sunday morning, Emma suggested we should move to a new house, a fresh start away from old memories. At first, I hesitated, but deep down, I knew she was right. The house carried too much history, both beautiful and painful. So, we moved to a quiet neighborhood in Austin, Texas. It was peaceful, and the people were friendly. I got a promotion at work, and Emma began teaching art classes at a nearby community center. It felt like life was giving us another chance. But as they say, peace never lasts forever. A few months after moving, I noticed Emma had started acting differently again. She was always on her phone, texting someone and smiling quietly. At first, I ignored it, reminding myself not to be paranoid. But the more I ignored, the more uneasy I became. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a message, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My stomach twisted. The number wasn't saved under any name. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but memories of what happened before came flooding back. When she came out, I handed her the phone and calmly asked, "Who's texting you?" She looked startled for a moment, then quickly forced a smile. "Oh, that's just from one of my students. I promised to help them with an art project." I nodded slowly but didn't reply. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, feeling the same old fear return. The next morning, I decided to quietly follow her to her class. I parked across the street from the art center and waited. She went inside, met a few people, and began teaching like usual. I stayed for a while until I convinced myself maybe I was just overthinking. But fate had other plans. As I was about to leave, I saw a man approach her after the class ended. He looked around my age, wearing casual clothes and a baseball cap. Emma smiled warmly when she saw him, and they hugged, not an inappropriate hug, but still one that lasted too long. My heart clenched. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but deep down, something didn't feel right. I drove home quietly, not knowing whether to confront her again or give her the benefit of the doubt. When she returned that evening, she was glowing, her mood lighter than usual. "How was your day?" I asked. "Great," she said, smiling as she placed her bag down. "I had a really good class today. Did your student enjoy it too?" I asked carefully. She froze for a second, then forced a laugh. "Yeah, they did." I could hear the hesitation in her voice, but I didn't press further. I decided to do something different this time. Instead of arguing or assuming, I wanted the truth to come to me naturally. The next few days went by as usual, but one night, when she said she had an extra art session, I quietly followed again. This time, she didn't go to the art center. She drove downtown and parked near a coffee shop. The same man from before was already waiting there. They sat at a corner table, talking and laughing. I stayed in my car, feeling my heart ache. I could have walked in, but I didn't want to make a scene. I wanted to see what she was hiding. After about an hour, they left the shop and stood near her car, still talking. Then I saw her hand lightly touch his arm, and she smiled in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. That was enough for me. The next morning, I asked her calmly, "Emma, who's that man you met at the coffee shop last night?" She dropped her spoon in shock. "What are you talking about?" "The man you hugged after your class. The one you met last night." "Who is he?" She was silent for a long time. Then she said softly, "His name is Ethan. He's one of the volunteers at the art center. We've been working on an exhibition together." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked quietly. It wasn't anything explicit, but it was enough. Emma and Daniel were sitting too close again. He was holding her hand, and she wasn't pulling away. They talked, laughed, and at one point, she rested her head on his shoulder. That was all I needed to see. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I sat on the couch in silence while Emma moved around the kitchen pretending everything was fine. Finally, I said, "Emma, how long have you known Daniel?" She froze. A few months." "Why?" I turned to her. "Do you like him?" Her eyes widened. "What kind of question is that? Answer me." She looked away. "Michael, you're being ridiculous." "I saw the footage," I said calmly. "You resting your head on his shoulder. Him holding your hand." Her face turned pale. You recorded us." "I had to," I said quietly. "Because I didn't recognize the woman I married anymore." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to happen." I closed my eyes. The words hit like a storm. So it did happen. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I was lonely, Michael. You've been so busy with work lately. I didn't plan it. It just happened." I stood up slowly. "Emma, being lonely doesn't give you the right to betray someone who trusted you. She broke down, crying. "I'm sorry. Please don't leave me." But I couldn't stay. Not that night. I packed a small bag and left to stay with Ryan. The following week was the hardest of my life. I ignored Emma's calls and messages. I just couldn't face her. I felt betrayed, humiliated, broken. Daniel disappeared. He didn't show up for work after that night. One of the neighbors said he saw him leaving town. Eventually, Emma came to my office one day. She looked pale and tired. "Michael, please talk to me," she said softly. "I made a mistake. I'll do anything to fix it." I sighed deeply. Trust, once broken, doesn't repair easily. She nodded, tears rolling down. "I'll wait for as long as it takes." I didn't reply. I just watched her leave. A month passed. I focused on work, therapy, and trying to rebuild my peace. I moved back home eventually, not because I forgave her completely, but because part of me wanted closure. Emma was different. She had stopped painting. The garden, once her pride, had started to wither. One evening, she came to me and said, "I've been seeing a counselor. I want to earn your trust again, Michael." Her sincerity touched me. It wasn't easy, but we began attending therapy sessions together. The counselor, Lauren Hayes, helped us open up about our feelings and frustrations. Emma admitted how emotionally distant she had felt. I realized how much my work obsession had pushed her away. We both cried during those sessions, but we also began to heal. Time has a way of softening even the deepest wounds. Slowly, we rebuilt our marriage, this time, on honesty. I forgave Emma, not because I had to, but because holding on to pain would only destroy me further. Daniel never returned, and neither of us ever spoke of him again. Emma and I started traveling together, rediscovering what had once drawn us close. We learned to communicate better, to be present for each other. And while the scars remain, our story became a lesson, a reminder that love isn't perfect, but it can be rebuilt with truth and patience. It was a quiet evening in Dallas, Texas, when I, Michael Carter, returned home from a long day at the office. I was a project manager at a construction firm, and life had been going smoothly, at least that's what I believed. My wife, Emma, and I had been married for 7 years. We lived in a cozy suburban house, the kind where you could hear the birds chirp in the morning and the breeze whisper through the trees at night. Emma was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her smile. She loved painting and gardening, and she often said our home felt alive because of the flowers she planted around the porch. We didn't have kids yet, though we had planned to start trying soon. A few months ago, I had hired a new watchman, Daniel, to take care of the property, especially since there had been some thefts reported nearby. He was in his mid-30s, polite, and hardworking. He always greeted me with a nod, kept the lawn clean, and made sure the gates were locked every night. I trusted him, perhaps too much. It started with small things. I'd come home and notice Emma talking to Daniel near the garden. Nothing unusual. She often offered cold water or tea to workers. But what caught my attention was the way Daniel laughed at something she said, and how Emma's expression turned softer, her smile lingering longer than usual. I brushed it off. "Don't be paranoid, Michael," I told myself. But then, Daniel started staying longer than his shift required. When I asked, he said he was just making sure everything was safe before leaving. One night, I came home earlier than expected because a client meeting got cancelled. As I parked the car, I noticed the porch lights were off, but the backyard lights were on. I walked quietly toward the back gate, and that's when I heard voices, Emma's and Daniel's. They were talking softly, almost in whispers. I couldn't make out much, but I distinctly heard Emma say, "You should leave before Michael comes back." My heart thumped. Why would she say that? When I entered through the kitchen, Emma was sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV. Daniel was gone. "Everything okay?" I asked casually. She smiled nervously. "Yeah, just watching something." I nodded, pretending not to notice the tension in her tone. But that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed her words again and again. In the following weeks, things changed. Emma became quieter, distant. She avoided eye contact when I talked and seemed distracted even during dinner. I tried to ask if something was bothering her, but she brushed it off saying she was just tired or not feeling well. Meanwhile, Daniel's attitude subtly changed too. He no longer greeted me with the same warmth. Sometimes, when I'd come home, I'd see him walking away quickly, as if trying to avoid me. One afternoon, I decided to take a half day from work without telling Emma. I wanted to surprise her. When I arrived home, her car was in the driveway, but the front door was locked. I used my keys and entered quietly. I called her name, no response. The sound of laughter came from the back of the house. My heart sank again. I walked carefully toward the source. The door to the backyard was slightly open. Through the small gap, I saw Emma and Daniel sitting near the garden bench. She was showing him something on her phone. They looked too close, too comfortable. I wanted to storm out and confront them, but something stopped me. I didn't want to act on assumptions. So, I decided to be patient. That evening, I told my friend Ryan, who was a private investigator, about my suspicions. He advised me to stay calm and let him install a small camera near the backyard to see what was really going on. For 2 days, nothing unusual happened. Then, on the third day, while I was supposedly at work, Ryan called me. "Michael, you might want to come home," he said quietly. "I think your suspicion wasn't wrong." My heart pounded as I drove back. When I arrived,